we have over here the principles of design. I've kind of labeled them in the order that I like to see them and the ones that I like to consider the most that are really, really important, the ones that work. If you have repetition, repetition, rhythm, and movement are kind of the same. But if you have those two elements in a painting, you've got it repeating, and the brain likes to see things that are repeated. They like to see lines repeated, shapes repeated, colors repeated, and textures repeated. Can't go wrong. Repetition is very static, where things are repeated over and over and over again. Rhythm and movement has the repetition in it, but it takes your eye from small to big, so it travels. It's a little more of a dynamic system of events, and you can create rhythm and movement and control the eye and where it goes. And typically I'd like to try to get a circle in my paintings. So, you know, the edges are kind of dead zones. We don't want the eye to go beyond the perimeter of the painting. We want to keep them entranced or enticed inside of the picture plane. Okay? Contrast. High, medium, low contrast. It all works. Yin-yang is my little way of controlling contrast. If you have a light area, you need a dark area, so there it is there. The brain, again, likes to see a number 10 value versus a number 1 value. If you keep a painting at, say, a 6, and it doesn't get any higher than that, which is kind of a dead zone for a lot of beginner painters. They can't get beyond 6, they get nervous or whatever. You lose the punch and you lose the contrast. So keep that in mind. You've got to be a little brave and, you know, splash out those dark colors, as long as you don't get them too crazy. Positive and negative space, that's a big concept for sculpture, but when we talk about positive and negative space, I like to refer to this concept called no-tan. And no-tan is, it simply kind of says what it means, like no tan, no half values. Although it's really hard to teach by using just black and white. No-tan does have a mid value, which is the silver that you see here. But you can see in the no-tan concept that, you know, it's quite dark, silhouetted against a light background. Dark here, sandwiching sort of the imagery where the sky would be darker at the top to light, dark in the water coming up. If you don't see it, you can make it up. You can't go wrong. And it helps the eye to go to your focal point. The eye, now get this is really important. The eye will always follow the white of the paper. Okay, that's big, that's huge. And if you have your focal point and it's white of the paper, you already have them. It's already there. That's a really huge concept. So focal point, the eye starts there, often white paper, and then move the eye around. Okay, visual path. We'll talk about that in a minute. I've talked about mass, weight, volume, and it anchors a painting. Balance, I didn't do balance. Yin-yang, I was teaching this 25 years ago when I was studying karate, and they were using the word yin-yang all the time. It's like opposites attract. You can't have one without the other. Not any different than life itself. Like you can compare the moon with the sun, spring with winter, male, female, positive current, negative current. You get what I'm saying. You can't have one without the other. Okay? So these are just things that the brain likes to see. These are the secrets, the tricks that keep the eye, keep the brain in your subject matter. Okay? That's why we're doing this. So this is a big one. Okay. Silhouette, no tan. Static dynamic tension, that's down in here. They're both legitimate. Landscape tends to be a little more dynamic because you can play with slivers of light through the fields. Static, one of my favorite painters of all time was Piet Mondrian, who discovered that if you introduce mathematics in a painting, you can't go wrong. It's perfect. Mathematics is pure. If you have ratios that you've calculated using mathematics and geometry, not any different than Alex Colville, who plays on that. You have balance. You have something that's harmonious, and you can't go wrong because it's been figured out using mathematics. Dynamic, I like dynamic. It has movement. It has a little more excitement to it, and you can create that by introducing zigzag through the light in your fields. So we do have some zigzag here, where you come back in this way. Could probably use a little more coming up this way, but you get the idea where it's used here. And zigzag I often use through landscape to avoid parallel lines. That'll kill a painting. Okay, because you're introducing a landscape with static lines, and parallel lines just don't work for me, or they don't work for the viewer. Mood. It's just as much fun painting a painting with high key lighting. You know, you don't ever point your camera at something at 12 o'clock at noon. It should be around 3 or 4 because you end up with the opposite of light, shadow. And the shadow, nothing like a shadow. It'll break up space, it adds dimension, anchors your painting, gives it a more natural feel, it's interesting. But on the other hand, living out in Nova Scotia, we used to get a lot of fog coming off the ocean, and it softened everything. So, man, it is beautiful painting fog and soft colors, but there's always a 9 or a 10 in there somewhere, usually in the foreground. That's the trick with painting, you know, fog. Can't be all that one value, the number 5 or 6. It floats away on you. The painting doesn't have any anchor. It doesn't keep you. It's not inviting. And of course, this should probably be up at the top, but center of interest and focal point is the very first thing the viewer looks at in 2.5 seconds. In representational painting, you should have a focal point. You should design your painting so that you bring the eye to the white area and to the rule of thirds. Okay? These lines represent the third of a golden rectangle, and if you can put your focal point where those on 4 lines, where the 9 boxes, I call it, when they intersect, when you put your focal point at 4 of these cross sections and in the middle, you can get away with it, but it's not easy. It's dangerous actually, because it cuts your painting in half. So the horizon line should never be in the middle of your picture plane, because you cut your painting in half. But you take it up to the top or the bottom third, and then you've got something that will be a little more comfortable and relaxing to look at. Over here we have visual path, taking the focal point and trying to create some kind of swirl for the viewer to move around the picture, keep them in the circle, and back to the focal point. That's why we do all of this. That's part of the trickery of enticing the viewer and not letting them go. Balance, very simple. It's 4 boxes. Whatever you do in 2 of the boxes, you got to do over here, and it's equilibrium on the opposite side of the picture plane. You just have to. Otherwise, it'll be unbalanced, and it'll be, you know, the weight will be wrong. So these little dots represent line, shape, or forms, or colors, or textures. Anything that you do in your painting have have to sort of make a triangle and come over here to the other side. I do it consciously all of the time. You just have to. And it's amazing what the brain will buy into. Even though it's a texture down in the corner and it doesn't make any sense. Monet taught us that, you know, the sky is not always blue, it's purple and yellow and orange, and he just had a lot of fun with that, but he also played with those colors in the water. That's why his pond paintings, lily pads, were so successful. He knew how to play the game. And we talked about dynamic and static tension. So that's probably it for now. I don't want to overload you. Just know that anybody who plays with the creative process, call yourself an artist, is a writer an artist, I don't know, but they certainly play with these words to make their books, you know, make sense. Because that's basically all we're doing, just echoing things that are in the universe. With ballet or musicians who play with riffs and hooks, chords. Can you imagine if a musician, say a guitar player, played one note and you looked at the sheet of music and it just had one note that was straight across the page? That would be pretty boring. Now that isn't any different than not using the word interesting and variety of line, where the musical notes, you know, roll along, and then down at the bottom they repeat themselves, creating rhythm. I mean, you just have, you know, music and art. I used to teach with it all the time because it's what the kids understood, and everybody loved Pink Floyd, or not everyone loved the Rolling Stones, but Pink Floyd was the winner. So, anyways, that's enough for now. We'll break and let's begin trying to reproduce and understand why Killarney works for you and works for me.